Oscar the Grouch's backstory and spoiler alert. He was not born in a trash can. Written and narrated by Peter J. Merrick. I love satire. I was born on March 17, 1969, what's St. Patrick's Day, a holiday associated with luck, optimism, celebration, and people making decisions they later regret. About 8 months later, on November 10th, 1969, Oscar the Grouch made his first appearance on television in the debut episode of Sesame Street. Looking back, I sometimes think we arrived in the same year to represent two different stages of adulthood. I arrived on the day dedicated to hope. Oscar arrived later to explain how that worked out. As a child, I thought Oscar was just a grouchy green muppet living in a garbage can and complaining about everything. I never questioned it. Apparently, nobody else did either. Looking back, that should have been our first clue. A grown green muppet living in a trash can in the middle of the city should have generated at least a few follow-up questions. The older I get, the more I find myself imagining a different backstory. Not the official Sesame Street version, the version that starts making sense after you have paid a few mortgages, attended enough weddings, survived enough disappointments, and discovered that life occasionally enjoys practical jokes. Now, before the lawyers from Sesame Street send me a cease and desist letter written in crayon, let me be clear. I am not saying this is Oscar's actual backstory. I am simply saying this is the backstory I imagine. And the older I get, the more believable it becomes. In my imagination, Oscar was not born in a trash can. Oscar followed the script until life put him there. Oscar was a traditional man. He believed everything society told him. Go to school, work hard, build a career, get married, buy a house, raise children, save for retirement. Follow the script and everything will work out. The problem was not that Oscar followed the script. The problem was that Oscar never stopped to ask who wrote it. Looking back, the author appears to have been heavily medicated. Oscar followed that script like it was handed down from the mountaintop. He studied hard, graduated from law school, built a successful practice, got married, bought a house, and started a family. He became the kind of dependable man society claims to admire, the kind of man everyone loves having around right up until the bill arrives. The years that followed looked like the American dream. There were children's school plays, hockey practices, Christmas mornings, family vacations, and enough Costco trips to support a medium-sized economy. Oscar worked hard and happily paid the bills because he genuinely believed he was building something permanent. Society said work harder. Oscar worked harder. Society said buy a bigger house. Oscar bought a bigger house. Society said provide for your family. Oscar provided. Society said happy wife, happy life. Oscar nodded enthusiastically and bought jewelry. Then one day, his wife joined a gym. Oscar thought this was wonderful because Oscar was still operating under the assumption that life made sense. Then she got a personal trainer. His name was Chad. Of course it was Chad. In the history of personal trainers, no important plot development has ever begun with a man named Walter. Then came the mommy makeover. For readers unfamiliar with the term, a mommy makeover is a fascinating medical procedure in which a husband pays for someone else to enjoy the final results. Oscar paid for the breast augmentation, the tummy tuck, the recovery, the follow-up appointments, and the celebratory girls' trip. Looking back, Oscar had accidentally become the venture capitalist funding his own replacement. The transformation was remarkable. His wife looked 15 years younger. Oscar looked 15 years older. Somehow they were both aging on the same budget. Scientists should probably study that. Then came the girls' nights. Then came the girls' weekends. Then came the girls' trips. Then came so many girls' trips that Oscar began to suspect his marriage had accumulated more airline points than a flight attendant. The photos were always identical, palm trees, cocktails, luxury resorts, sunsets, inspirational quotes, more sunsets. Enough sunsets to make Oscar wonder if his wife had accidentally married the sun. Strangely, for something called a girls' trip, there seemed to be remarkably few actual girls in the photographs. Oscar noticed this. Then he immediately did what millions of husbands have done throughout history. He explained it away. By year 3, Oscar had become so skilled at ignoring red flags that he could have worked professionally as a colorblind crossing guard. Whenever Oscar asked a question, he discovered a new flaw in his personality. Apparently, he was insecure, then controlling, then emotionally unavailable, then emotionally overwhelming. Oscar eventually concluded he possessed so many contradictory defects that medical science should probably study him. One evening, Oscar noticed his wife smiling at her phone with more enthusiasm than she had shown him in years. Did Oscar investigate? Of course not. Oscar was following the script. The script said trust. The script said communicate. The script said love conquers all. The script never mentioned Chad. To be fair, neither did Chad's wife. Then one afternoon, reality arrived carrying a flamethrower. Oscar came home and was handed divorce papers. Apparently, his wife had discovered her soulmate. As fate would have it, her soulmate was a 26-year-old trainer whose resume consisted of abdominal muscles protein powder and using the word bro as punctuation. Within weeks, Oscar was out. Within weeks, Chad was in. Within weeks, people who had never built anything were explaining how the things Oscar built should be divided. Oscar discovered that it takes 30 years to build a life and approximately 3 business days to dismantle one. Then came the lawyers, consultants, mediators, experts hired to explain why the previous experts were wrong. Every one of them assured Oscar they were there to help. By the time they finished helping, Oscar was convinced that being attacked by a pack of bears would have been the more affordable option. Then Oscar learned about parental alienation. This is a fascinating process whereby a father who spent 20 years changing diapers, coaching Little League, paying for braces, helping with homework, funding vacations, and assembling bicycles on Christmas Eve somehow becomes a guest star in his own family story. Oscar found the experience educational. Apparently, memories are negotiable. Apparently, history is editable. Apparently, the man who paid for Disney World can eventually be rewritten as the fellow who occasionally wandered through family photographs in the background. The house was gone. The savings were gone. The retirement account looked like it had survived an armed robbery. The future Oscar imagined was gone. At one point, he became concerned that even the family dog might hire legal counsel and seek emotional support payments. Then came the revelation, the trash can. At first, Oscar viewed it as a setback. Then he ran the numbers. No mortgage, no property taxes, no homeowners association, no maintenance fees, no girls' trips, no Chad, no discussions that begin with the phrase, "we need to talk." Suddenly, Oscar realized he was not living in a trash can. He was living in a detached residence with no mortgage, no property taxes, no maintenance fees, and no Chad. In California, that makes him a millionaire. The trash can never criticized him. The trash can never needed space. The trash can never announced it was finding itself. The trash can never returned from a retreat with a completely different personality and a fresh list of boundaries. The trash can already knew exactly what it was. A trash can. There is something refreshing about that level of self-awareness. People think Oscar is a grouch because he complains about everything. I think people have misunderstood him. Oscar is not grumpy. Oscar is what happens when optimism collides headfirst with reality at 70 miles per hour. Children see a grouchy green Muppet living in a trash can. Men of a certain age see a cautionary tale. They see a man who followed every rule, checked every box, trusted the process, believed the promises, ignored the warning signs, funded every dream, and eventually discovered that the script came with terms and conditions nobody bothered to read. As a child, I thought Oscar the Grouch was a grouchy monster living in a garbage can. As an adult, I think Oscar may be the patron saint of every man who followed the script without reading the fine print. Oscar was not born in a trash can. Oscar simply followed the directions. The trash can was the destination. Peter Merrick, A.K.A. Old Fart, still optimistic and finding silver linings.